31 million people watched this moment live. By sunrise, fewer than half of them had slept, and by noon, a sitting president had publicly threatened to revoke a broadcast license that he does not have the legal authority to touch. By 6:14 a.m. Eastern, the Federal Communications Commission's public comment portal has logged more traffic than it received in the entire previous fiscal quarter. By 7:30, 4 constitutional law professors have issued independent statements, none coordinated, none solicited, clarifying that broadcast license revocation does not function the way the President of the United States described it in a post published at 4:51 a.m. By 8:15, the clip has been translated into 23 languages, and in 9 of those languages, the translators have attached footnotes explaining the American broadcast licensing system because viewers abroad cannot believe what they are reading is real. All of it. Every server crash, every legal filing, every footnote in Mandarin and Portuguese and Arabic traces back to one sentence spoken by Jimmy Kimmel on a stage in Hollywood at 11:38 p.m. on a Sunday night. Here is what actually happened inside the Dolby Theater. You could feel it before you could name it. The room had a frequency that night, a hum underneath the polished surface that anyone who has ever worked a live broadcast would have recognized as wrong. Not dangerous, not yet, but loaded. The way a sky looks green before a tornado touches down, and everyone stands on the porch, staring at it because the color is so beautiful, they forget what it means. The Dolby Theater's house lights dim at their scheduled time. The orchestra plays its scheduled cue. The confidence monitors glow with the approved script in 36-point type. Everything is exactly where it is supposed to be. And if you were watching from home, if you were seeing this through a single camera angle chosen by a director who had rehearsed the shot list 14 times, you would have believed that the evening was proceeding normally. But if you were inside that room, if you could feel the way the front-of-house crew held their clipboards a little tighter, if you noticed the floor director checking the wings every 40 seconds instead of every 3 minutes, if you caught the moment a production assistant near the prompter station reached for her phone and then stopped, her fingers hovering over the screen as though the act of texting someone would make the thing she was sensing become real, you would have known that something had already shifted before a single word was spoken. Kimmel is at the podium. He has been there for 22 minutes, moving through material that lands precisely where it is designed to land. Laughs in the right places, pauses in the right places, callbacks that reward the audience for paying attention. His hands rest on the podium's edge. His weight is forward, his energy warm, his rhythm as familiar as a song you have heard so many times that you stop noticing the lyrics. You could feel the room trusting him. 1,400 people leaning into the comfort of a man who has done this before, who knows where the edges are, who will take them close but never over. That trust is important, because what happens next only works because of it. He finishes a joke about a nominee's acceptance speech from a previous year. The laugh rolls through the room. Genuine, easy, the kind of laugh that loosens shoulders and uncrosses arms. Kimmel waits for it to settle. He does not start the next joke. Instead, he reaches beneath the podium. His left hand moves slowly, deliberately, the way a person reaches for something they have placed in a specific spot and checked 3 times to make sure it is still there. His fingers close around a folder. The folder is black. It is thin. 3 pages, maybe 4. He places it on the podium surface and rests both palms flat on top of it, covering it completely, as though the folder is a wound and his hands are applying pressure. The room does not know what it is looking at, but it knows something has changed. You could feel the shift in the way the laughter died. Not abruptly, not with a gasp, but the way a candle dies when you close a window. The oxygen just leaves. Kimmel opens the folder. He does not hold it up. He reads from it, eyes down, voice dropping into a register that sits below his performance voice, below his interview voice, in a place that sounds like a man talking to himself and letting you overhear. He reads a date. He reads a name. He reads the title of a regulatory filing submitted to the FCC 11 months ago by a political action committee whose largest donor is named in public records that Kimmel projects onto the screen behind him without turning around. The filing requests a review of broadcast license renewal criteria for a network whose coverage, the filing alleges, has demonstrated persistent editorial bias inconsistent with public interest obligations. The language is bureaucratic. The intent is not. This filing, Kimmel says, his eyes still on the folder, was submitted 11 months ago. It was reviewed, it was logged, and it was placed in a queue that nobody outside the commission was supposed to know existed. He looks up. His eyes find a point in the middle of the audience. Not the front row, not the balcony, but the dead center of the orchestra section, where the people sit who are famous enough to be seen, but not powerful enough to be protected. The queue is real. The filing is real. And the person who paid for it is sitting in a building 6 blocks from the White House right now, waiting to see if I actually say this out loud. He pauses. The pause is not for effect. It is the pause of a man stepping off a curb into traffic and taking one last breath before his foot hits the street. I'm saying it out loud. The screen behind him changes. A timeline appears. 12 months of correspondence between the PAC, 2 FCC commissioners' offices, and a consulting firm whose client list includes the sitting president's re-election campaign. The correspondence is displayed in chronological order. Kimmel does not read every entry. He reads 4. Each one is short. Each one contains a phrase that rhymes with the one before it. Editorial accountability, public interest compliance, license renewal contingencies, programming standards review. The phrases stack like bricks. You could feel the wall they were building before you could see its shape. This isn't regulation, Kimmel says. He turns to the screen for the first time. His hand rises and touches the surface near the 3rd entry, a gesture so quiet it barely registers on camera but lands in the room like a fingertip pressed against a bruise. This is scaffolding. A man in the 9th row leans forward so far that his elbows slide off his knees. A woman 3 seats away covers her mouth with both hands, not because she is shocked, but because her body has decided to do it before her mind can intervene. The word sits in the room, scaffolding, and everyone who hears it understands what it means without needing it explained. Scaffolding is temporary. Scaffolding is structural. Scaffolding is what you erect around a building when you intend to change what it looks like from the outside while leaving the inside untouched. Then the door near the stage-left curtain opens. A man steps through. He is mid-40s, wearing a suit that fits the way suits fit when they are purchased for a specific occasion and have never been worn before. His press badge hangs from a lanyard around his neck. His hands are empty. He is a former FCC staff attorney who spent 3 years in the office of a commissioner whose name appears twice on the timeline projected behind him. He does not walk to the microphone. He stands at the edge of the stage, the way a person stands at the edge of a pool before deciding whether the water is too cold. His voice, when it comes, is steady but tight, wound around each word like wire around a spool. He describes a meeting. The meeting took place in a conference room on the 8th floor of the FCC's headquarters. Present were 2 staff attorneys, 1 policy advisor, and a consultant who was not on the building's visitor log, but whose parking validation was later found in a database that the Commission's IT department maintains for security audits. The consultant presented a memorandum. The memorandum outlined a legal strategy for using broadcast license renewals as a mechanism to apply pressure to networks whose editorial content was deemed politically unfavorable. The strategy was not illegal. The attorney pauses on that word. Not illegal. He says it the way a doctor says not terminal. Technically accurate, practically meaningless, and utterly failing to capture the severity of what is actually happening. I sat in that room for 40 minutes, he says. I took notes on a legal pad that I later photographed and stored in a location I am not going to disclose tonight. I did not object during the meeting. I did not report it afterward. I went home, and I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside because I needed to figure out how to walk into my house and look at my children while carrying what I had just heard. Kimmel watches him. The audience watches him. The stillness in the room has become a physical thing, a pressure that pushes against eardrums and settles in chests. A second person steps through the door. She is younger. Her credentials are not displayed on screen, and she does not state her title. She identifies herself only as a former communications staffer who worked on the transition between 2 FCC chairpersons. Her voice breaks before she finishes her second sentence. Her throat works visibly, muscles tightening, releasing. Tightening again, before she finds the next word. She describes not a single meeting, but a culture. A culture in which the boundary between regulatory independence and political influence was not crossed in a single dramatic moment, but eroded gradually, the way water erodes stone, not by force but by persistence, by the constant, patient, daily application of pressure so slight that no individual instance would survive scrutiny, but whose cumulative effect was the reshaping of an institution's entire posture. Her hands grip each other at her waist, her fingers press together until the color leaves them. Silence doesn't protect anyone, she says. It just makes the people who enforce it more comfortable. The room breaks in waves. Someone in the mezzanine begins to clap. The sound is slow, deliberate, each strike of palm against palm carrying the full weight of a conscious decision. A second person joins. A third. The clapping does not build into applause. It stays low and rhythmic, a pulse that moves through the room, the way a heartbeat moves through a body. Not loud enough to be heard from outside, but strong enough to keep everything inside alive. Kimmel waits. He does not gesture for silence. He lets the clapping find its own end, the way a rainstorm finds its own end. When the room settles, he places both hands on the podium and leans forward, his voice dropping to a level that the balcony has to strain to hear. The scaffolding is on the screen. The people who built it just told you how, and the man who paid for it is not in this room tonight, but he is watching, and the only thing he is thinking about right now is not whether this is true. He already knows it is true. He is thinking about whether the scaffold holds. And I am telling you, standing here, on a stage owned by a network whose license is in that queue, it doesn't. Not after tonight. Trump's face is not in the room, but his response arrives before Kimmel finishes the sentence. At 11:41 p.m., 3 minutes after the segment ends, the first post appears. It is 4 sentences long. It calls the broadcast a disgrace to the Academy and to the American people. It does not address the timeline. It does not address the filing. It does not address the witnesses. It addresses Kimmel directly. A failing host on a failing network whose license should be reviewed immediately. The word immediately is capitalized. The second post arrives at 11:58. It is longer. It names the network. It uses the phrase broadcast license revocation for the first time. It states that appropriate action will be taken. The third post at 12:34 a.m. is written entirely in capital letters. It contains 2 exclamation marks and a claim that the segment was produced in coordination with known political enemies. The fourth, at 1:17 a.m., threatens legal action against all parties involved without specifying which parties or which laws have been broken. Each post is screenshotted within seconds and placed beside the timeline from the broadcast. On one side, dates, filings, correspondence, and 2 people who stood on a stage and spoke. On the other, a man alone with a phone, his sentences growing longer and louder as the thing he is trying to deny grows more visible with every word he types. By morning, constitutional scholars have appeared on 4 networks explaining that the president does not have unilateral authority to revoke a broadcast license. The FCC's own website crashes twice under the volume of visitors searching for the public comment portal. 3 sitting senators issue statements. One uses the word scaffolding. The word moves through the news cycle the way a dye moves through water, slowly at first, then everywhere at once, coloring everything it touches. Forums pull the original filing from public records. Journalists contact the consulting firm named on the timeline. The firm's website goes offline at 9:14 a.m. and does not return. The story does not end with a confession. It does not end with a resignation. It ends the way the most dangerous stories end, with a structure made visible to the people it was built to contain. The scaffolding is not torn down. It stands in full view, exposed, incapable of performing its only function now that everyone can see where the bolts are. People do not debate politics. They debate architecture. They debate what a government looks like when the tools designed to protect the public are quietly repurposed to protect the people the public needs protection from. They share the clip not because it is entertaining, but because it is a blueprint. And once you have seen a blueprint, you cannot unsee the building. After everything you just saw, ask yourself one thing. What else has been hiding behind the scaffolding? Subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is not over. It is just getting started.